I never believed houses could have personalities, until we moved into the one on Waverly Lane. It was supposed to be a fresh start. Me, my wife, and our daughter Sophie. After everything that happened last year, we needed space. Somewhere quiet. The house wasn't new, but it looked well kept. 2 stories, warm brown siding, big old maple tree out front. The kind of house that looks like it's been waiting for someone. The real estate lady said it had been empty for a few years. The owners moved out suddenly, left most of the furniture behind. Too much trouble to ship, she said with that salesman's smile. The first few days were peaceful. Sophie ran through the hallways laughing. My wife unpacked in silence, humming old songs under her breath. For the first time in months, the air felt normal, but it didn't last. It started with the radio, an old analog one built into the kitchen wall, the kind with a dial and a small green light. We didn't even know it worked until one night it just turned itself on. Soft music. Not from any station I could find. Just an old jazz tune, full of static. We laughed it off at first, said it was probably some local signal bleed. But then over the next few nights we realized the radio didn't turn on randomly. It came on when we argued. Even if we were whispering in another room, as soon as voices rose, the static would fade in and that same tune would start playing, like it was trying to calm us down. It sounds silly now, saying it out loud, but at the time it felt comforting. A house that didn't like shouting. One evening, after a long day, I came home and found my wife sitting on the couch in the dark. "The radio played today," she said quietly. "Were you fighting with Sophie?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, I was crying." The next day, the lights flickered. Not all at once, just in certain rooms. Always when someone lied. It wasn't obvious at first, but after a while, we started noticing the pattern. If Sophie said she brushed her teeth but didn't, the hallway light would dim for a second. If I said I'm fine when I wasn't, the kitchen bulb would hum and buzz until I left the room. By the end of that week, we'd stopped pretending everything was normal, because the house wasn't just listening, it was reacting. After a week of strange coincidences, I started keeping a notebook. Every flicker, every hum, every song that came through that old radio. My wife thought I was being obsessive, but I needed to understand why. The lights, the sounds, they weren't random. The house was aware. It didn't want noise or lies or sadness. But what it did want, that's what scared me. One night after Sophie went to bed, I decided to test it. I stood in the kitchen and said something I knew wasn't true. "The sky is green." The kitchen bulb flickered once. Just once. Then I said another. "My name isn't Michael." Another flicker. It was subtle, almost polite, but when I whispered, "I don't love my family," the radio crackled to life. That same old jazz tune. Only this time, slower, distorted, like it was morning. My wife came downstairs half asleep, asking what was wrong. When I told her what happened, she stared at me for a long time, then said, "Don't do that again." For a few days, everything went quiet. The lights stayed steady. The radio stayed off. Then Sophie started talking to the walls. At first, I thought it was imaginary friend stuff. She's 7. Kids talk to empty rooms all the time. But one night I overheard her whispering, "It said it doesn't like you sad." I froze outside her door. "Sophie, who said that?" She pointed at the corner of the ceiling. "The house. It hums when you're angry. It hums like it's scared." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every small sound, the pipes creaking, the wind brushing against the siding, felt deliberate, like breathing. And around 3 a.m., the radio clicked on again. No music this time, just a voice, soft, faint. A woman's voice saying, "Please, stay." The next morning, Sophie was already in the kitchen, drawing at the table. She looked tired, like she hadn't slept. "What were you doing up so late?" I asked. She smiled without looking up. "Talking to the lady in the wall." I froze. The what? She pointed to the corner again. The one who hums when you and Mommy argue. My wife looked at me, pale, nervous. We hadn't fought in front of Sophie in weeks, but somehow, the house knew when we were upset. That evening I pulled the old radio apart. I wanted to find a speaker, a wire, something to explain the voice, but there was nothing inside, just dust and a faded paper label with a name scribbled on it. Property of Helen L. Helen. Later I searched the county records online. The house had been built in 1958 by a couple named Lawrence and Helen. Helen died in 1962, in this house. Fell down the basement stairs. That night I told my wife. She didn't want to hear it. "Don't you dare tell Sophie any of this," she whispered. But when we went to check on our daughter, her bedroom light was already on. The radio, the one I'd dismantled, sat on her nightstand, plugged in, playing that same warped jazz tune. And Sophie was sitting cross-legged, whispering softly. "It's okay, Helen. Daddy doesn't mean to yell." I felt my stomach twist. When I stepped closer, the radio's dial turned by itself. The volume rose, slow and deliberate, until the hum filled the room. Then, through the static, I heard that same voice again. He found me. The bulb overhead flickered violently, and then, everything went dark. When the lights came back on, Sophie was gone. The radio lay silent on the floor, its cord still plugged in. I tore through the house calling her name. Kitchen, hallway, upstairs. Nothing. Then I heard it, a faint hum from below. The basement, the one door I never went through, the one that always seemed to breathe when you passed by. I grabbed a flashlight and went down. The smell hit first, old metal, damp earth, and something sour. Each step creaked like it was warning me to turn back. At the bottom I found the radio again, the same one that had been upstairs, sitting on an old workbench. Its speaker crackled, then spoke. "Michael." My blood ran cold. I hadn't told anyone my name when we moved here. "You shouldn't have opened the walls," it whispered. And then I heard something behind me, a dragging sound, slow, wet, heavy. I turned the flashlight and froze. From the far end of the room, where the concrete met the old brick wall, a section was cracked open. Inside the gap, a figure was pressed between the studs, its face pale and paper-thin, eyes wide like someone mid-scream. Her lips were moving, barely. "He listens," she rasped. The radio's dial spun violently, static bursting like thunder, and the basement lights exploded. I stumbled back and saw Sophie standing at the top of the stairs, holding the old photograph from the attic. A family photo, Helen, her husband, and a little girl who looked exactly like Sophie. "She said we can all stay now," Sophie murmured. And then, from the walls around us, came a low, wet breath, not quite human, but too close to be anything else. I didn't remember getting back upstairs. One second, Sophie was holding that photo. The next, I was standing in the kitchen, drenched in sweat, my flashlight flickering on the counter. Outside, the storm had passed, but the house was breathing again. I could hear it, faintly beneath the hum of the refrigerator. Every wall seemed to pulse with that same slow inhale. "We can all stay now," Sophie said again, sitting in the dark. She wasn't crying, wasn't frightened. She was calm, like something had settled inside her. I looked at the photo she'd dropped. There was Helen, her husband, and the little girl. But now the faces were faded. Only Sophie's remained clear. That's when I realized the house wasn't haunted. It was hungry. And it didn't want to scare us away. It wanted to keep us. Every whisper, every flicker, every word in the static, it was trying to learn us, to remember us. The basement door creaked open again. A voice came from below. Helen's voice, but not from the radio this time. It came from the floorboards, from the walls, from every beam soaked in rain and rot. Now you can listen too. I grabbed Sophie's hand and ran for the front door, but when I pulled it open, it wasn't the street outside. It was the same hallway, same wallpaper, same light flickering at the end. The house had folded itself shut. We were inside the memory now. The last thing I remember is the sound of the radio clicking on again. A cheerful voice. Helen's. "Welcome home, Michael. Welcome home, Sophie." The light buzzed overhead, and then the walls went quiet. Weeks later, a new couple moved in. They said they could sometimes hear faint static at night, and a man's voice on the other end saying, "Don't listen too long." But by then, it's already too late.